Greetings. I hope this presentation finds you well. My name is Kelvin Rutledge. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I currently serve as the Director of the Office of Career and Professional Development here at Southern. I'm here to bring you a brief introduction into Interviewing 101. Thanks for watching this presentation, and we hope you find this information useful. For our presentation today, we'll be covering a couple of things. So first, we'll making sure that we first just define what an interview is, making sure that we clarify some core fundamental information pieces that's important. Second, we'll cover a little bit about how do you effectively prepare for an interview, whether that's for a part-time or full-time position, a graduate school interview, or a successful transition out of the institution. And then finally, we'll talk about conducting an interview and next steps post-interview and what that process looks like. So to briefly touch on defining an interview, we want to make sure that we clarify what an interview is and what it's not. So first and foremost, it is a strategic conversation with purpose. And so there is a defined intention that through a recruitment process, a hiring manager or a hiring organization has decided that an individual has enough competency, knowledge, skills, and ability to potentially perform a position that's been advertised. And so because of that general assessment, an organization invites a potential job candidate in for what's called a strategic conversation or interview. Within that strategic conversation, it is the goal to persuade a potential employer or hire organization that the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you've presented through the resume, cover letter, and any other associated documents are true and do ultimately align through what the organization is looking to accomplish. But also know that, again, it is a strategic conversation, which means it is a two-way street. And so it is an opportunity and a time for you as a job candidate to really gather information about the position, the organization, and potential career progression within the organization. And so with that foundation, there's goals for both the interviewer and goals for the interviewee. And so let's start briefly about what the interviewer is looking to accomplish within an interview setting. So first and foremost, the interviewer is designed to help promote the organization and to attract the best candidate. And so when we think about a candidate pool coming in for specific interviews, the interviewer has to make sure that we're presenting a potential clean, focused, and really guided presentation of what the organization is and how we bring talent in to achieve that kind of vision and that presentation of the organization. And through that, and it is our hope and an intention that the best possible candidate will see that they align themselves with that organization and ultimately want to perform the duties of the responsibility of the job. Second, the information or the interviewer is looking to gather information about the candidate. So again, does the knowledge, the skills, the ability, the competency align through the documents that were submitted through the professional employment portal. Third, it is true to form that the interviewer is assessing how well the candidate's qualifications do match with the job requirement. And so within any interview process, there has to be some level of assessment and comparison to understand how does this person really align and making sure that they can effectively perform the position and ultimately do align with the organization. And then finally, to determine whether or not the candidate will fit within the organization and the staff. And so thinking about when jobs are advertised, they are already existing within a current structure, schema, and employees that already exist. And so while someone can be right in terms of knowledge, skills, and ability, they also have to be the right fit in terms of existing through what's already currently ongoing and existing within the organization. And so much as the interviewer has goals, there are goals that the interviewee are looking to accomplish as well. So when you are engaging in an interview process, there's three main things that you definitely want to focus on. So first and foremost, you want to highlight yourself as the best possible candidate for a specific position or role. So again, you've articulated through your employment documents, the resume and the cover letter, or a resume and a personal statement that you see yourself aligning with this organization, that you have a keen interest, and more importantly, that you can perform the duties and responsibilities of the position. And so you want to make sure that you're continuing that highlight and that amplification of yourself. Second, you want to take time to really gather information about the position and its functionality. So again, this is a two-way conversation and really thinking strategically about gathering information that's going to help you make an informed decision about whether or not you truthfully want to move forward in a search or recruitment process, or whether or not you want to remove yourself from that search altogether. And then finally, really taking the time to determine whether the organization and the staff is what you prefer. And so thinking about staff makeup, staff size, staff organization, does it really make sense and fit within your career progression and your career trajectory and ultimately what you want? So through that structure and the goals, we see what an interview is and ultimately what both parties want to achieve through this conversation. So now that we've defined what an interview is, we want to make sure that we take some time to give some recommendations around preparing for a strategic interview and preparing for that strategic conversation. So when we think about preparing for an interview, there's really a couple of main domains that you want to consider. So first and foremost, you do want to do a holistic assessment on knowing yourself as a potential job candidate. And we look at knowing yourself through a variety of domains. So first and foremost, you want to understand your academic performance and background specific to your institution. So if you're in a degree such as interdisciplinary studies, you have multiple cognates that form and influence the construction of your degree. So how do you communicate the value of that constructional experience? And more importantly, what is the person supposed to take away from that? If you are a more direct or linear experience, such as communication or nursing, then really communicating how your academic degree and credentials really align with that experience. Second, you want to talk about the holistic totality of the experiences that you bring to the table, both the professional or what we like to say industry-related experiences that make sense and align with the organization or industry you're looking to, but also the additional experiences that you have, whether that's volunteerism, leadership experiences, clubs and organizations, and other relative experiences as a whole. Third, you want to take the time to make sure that you highlight any relevant or special skills that you have. So this can be if you speak a second or an additional language, if you have fluency and knowledge around computer skills, technological programs, or any relevant functions that are timely and relevant for the industry of choice that you're looking for. And then 4, 5, and 6, thinking about your career goals and aspirations. So ultimately, how does the specific position really fit in terms of what you're looking to achieve in terms of your trajectory and the way that you envision your career, and ultimately, how will this empower you to take the next steps? And then finally, just taking some time to really reflect on your professional values, interests, and skills. Ultimately, getting back to, again, how are you defining your career and what are those next steps that you're taking? And then finally, acknowledging really any important social identities that can help shape or impact your experience. So thinking about race, gender, sexual orientation, access and ability, are any of those identities important to how you view the world of work and how you want to show up? And so are they going to impact or influence your decision-making processes? Are these things that you have to communicate or ask more inquiries or questions about? And so just giving yourself the capacity and knowing how to start that conversation is really important. In addition to that, really taking the time to know the organization is going to be important. So evaluating the mission, the vision, and the values of the organization. So these things are readily available via a company or organization website. So just taking the time to ensure that you have familiarized yourself with these core components and you know how to speak to why these components align to why you're taking an opportunity for an interview with an organization. Second, taking some time to evaluate the structure of the office or the unit in relation to the position that you really are collaborating with. So is this position within a team of 2 or in a position or a team of 25? Are you directly related to a mid-level manager, or are you directly related to the head person in the organization? So just making sure that you are fully aware of who you're interviewing with and how this position fits within the structure. And then ultimately evaluating the positional fit within the organization. So when you interview and thinking about the organization, do your values, your interests, your skills align? When you think about the totality of the employees, do they make sense in terms of who you want to work with demographically, competency-wise, organization-wise? And so just taking the time to making sure that you know what you're walking into prior to the interview. And then finally, taking some time to making sure that you understand the interview cycle that you will be going through. And so on the screen, you will see 4 individual formats that's represented by companies and organizations that use. So in some structures, you will find an organization do an all-inclusive interview format. So they're using this one interview kind of experience to screen your knowledge, your skill, your ability, your fit, your understanding of the role, and using that singular interview experience to make one final judgment about whether or not you are the candidate they want to hire. Most employers and organizations favor a 2-interview format structure. And so what that means is that that first interview is kind of a general screening interview to ensure that you at a core level have some knowledge, skills, and abilities that they are looking for within a position. And then that second interview is a more targeted experience to making sure that you're the right organizational fit, that your trajectory is more aligned to what the company is seeking, and more importantly, that you've thought critically and analytically that the position is right for you now that you've had some baseline engagement and interaction with the company. For some organizations, you may see a 3-interview format. And so what that first interview is that a generic screening, and where that second interview comes into a more focused screening. So a first interview may just be kind of just making sure that you meet the benchline requirements for the job, and that they can verify your credentials, whereas that second interview is more of a targeted kind of positionality screening or potential environmental screening for certain factors they look at of employees. And then after those 2 screening interviews, they move forward with a targeted experience that's relevant for their organization. And then in some companies and industries, you may see the 4-interview format, where some companies and organizations still do the 2 screening format. So maybe at a core level, do you have the qualifications? And then 2, do you have the competencies and abilities and knowledge points to successfully navigate your experience? But then the 3rd interview is more of a technical or competency-based interview experience to show, do you, in practice, have these skill sets that we're looking for? Or in practice, do you have the technical knowledge and competencies to perform problems that you would see in this role? After those 3 interviews, you may be invited to the final round, which is that targeted experience to evaluate fit, positionality, and understanding within the organization. So just taking the time to make sure you understand how does all of these formats work within organizations, and how they connect to your current time experience is really important. So after that preparation piece, you really want to make sure that you are doing well in terms of the interview structure. And so what we're now going to transition to is really focusing on conducting an actual interview. So when we think about the interview at a core level, the goal is controlled by the type of interview. So when we think about that structure of the interviews that we just reviewed, what someone is looking for or assessing is dictated by those experiences. And so just taking the time to making sure that you understand, is it a screening versus a targeted screening versus a really focused interview experience, to making sure that I'm a final candidate and they're really looking to see, can I really fit in their organization? When we think about interviews, of course, the format is typically dictated by the type of interview that we're looking for, but typically what we see is a variety of questions intermingled around these 4 or 5 main areas. So of course, we definitely want to make sure that we have an introduction to you as a candidate and kind of just disclose some core level professional interest. Second, we'll kind of transition into some more self-awareness and technical ability questions. And so just making sure that at a core level, again, the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies that you are searching for that specific position are occurring within you as a candidate. And then what we see more as employers moving to more situational or behavior-based questions. I'm going to speak briefly about this in just one moment, but what we do see is that what more employers are looking for you is to kind of pull from your previous experiences to really relate the value of your work experience. Fourth, we may see that employers have specific or additional questions of interest that they really screen for. So if your position that you're looking for is very technical, you may see more technically focused questions, or for some organizations, they're really values-based organizations, so they may probe and pique their interest around how you see yourself aligning with those values. And then finally, there will be some interview wrap-up where I give you space for questions and kind of wrap up the conclusion of the experience. Now, when we talk about situational and behavior-based interviewing, the premise here is that past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. And so the interviewer is going to be looking and framing questions specifically for examples. Behavior-based interviewing and situational interviewing is very structured, and the interviewer is going to likely ask the same set of questions that are either situational or behavior-based to each candidate. And so while the variety of questions can vary from candidate to candidate, these behavior-based and situational examples really give some level of critical assessment for all candidates when they interview for a specific position, and kind of contribute to the organization. So when we talk about situational or behavior-based interview questions, a couple come to mind, and we just wanted to make sure that we provide you specific examples. So for example, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a student and how you handled it. Or give me a specific example of a goal you had set in the past and tell me about your success in reaching it. The purpose here is that these questions you can't give a generalized answer to. We're looking for you to think critically about the experiences that you've had up to this point and specifically pull a relevant answer to these questions. A potential recommended format in terms of approaching these type of questions is what we call the STAR method, so STAR. So there's 4 general steps or areas that you want to reply back to with these type of questions. So first, really thinking about the situation that relates to the question that's been posed. Second, thinking about the task that you took specifically in relation to that situation. Third, thinking about the actions that you did in relation to the tasks that you've clearly indicated. And then finally, thinking about the result of said actions that you took in relation to that situation. This kind of structure gives you a format to really thinking about quickly how can you respond, but also give a very succinct and clean answer. When we think about interviews as a whole, there's a variety of things that interviewers can potentially evaluate. And so what we definitely see are a variety of 8 areas listed here on the screen, from overall preparation to ethics and values to goals and accomplishments, so on and so forth. Typically what we do see, about 50 to 70% of interview decisions are focused on areas 2, 3, and 4 that's listed on the slide. So the verbal and nonverbal communication skills, particularly about engaging and communicating the value of your prior experiences and why they would be relating and have success with that organization. Area 3, the self-confidence and interpersonal skills. So no employer or organization can teach you how to believe in yourself and believe that you can perform a role. And more importantly, build relationships and collaborative rapport with people that you don't know. And then 4th, thinking about problem solving and creative abilities. Most positions in organizations now are very not static positions. And so thinking about how are you able to be agile and being able to move and provide and perform a variety of skills, competencies and abilities in a variety of environments. And so thinking through those 3 big areas about how are you communicating your experiences in a way that makes sense and that is valuable to a company or organization. Within every interview, there will be a question and answer portion. It's important that candidates always have questions prepared for an interview. This section is really designed for you to gather information that will aid you to make an informed decision-making process. So again, this is an opportunity to not ask generic questions, but really questions that will allow you to differentiate between positions and making sure that you understand who is your number 1 versus who is your number 3. As mentioned, you want to stay away from the generic questions and experience-specific questions. So it's not helpful to ask someone, why do you like working for this organization? Your why for why you like working somewhere could be totally different and may not actually help you in your decision-making process. So what you want to do is try to aim to develop questions that's based around your value set. So for example, if you identify strongly as a type A person and you value structure and organization and communication, it would be helpful for you to ask, can you talk to me about the onboarding and the orientation process for this position? That information can make you feel a little bit more comfortable about the role and provide a cleaner and more inside experience. When thinking about items such as compensation, benefits, and things that are important to organizations and to interviewees as well, these type of questions should be reserved for the final round process. Most companies and organizations are willing to share this information, but only when they have been given clearance and approval to share that with external parties. So know that companies and organizations will have this conversation and they want to have the conversation with you because they know that this is an important and critical decision-making factor. So just hold this out until you know that you're in the final process or the final phase of your interview experience, and then approach that conversation. And then finally, one of the most important questions that you can ask is to clarify the recruitment timeline. You should never leave the interview experience wondering about what is the company's next steps, or more importantly, when they would reach out. And what's important is to ask that question and then use that answer to your own advantage about following up and engaging the process. So if you ask, when can a candidate expect to hear about next steps and an offer, that employer says 2 weeks, use that to your advantage. And so once 2 weeks pass, gives a company or an employer some grace time. What I normally recommend is 3 business days, and then reach out. Hey, I've recognized that we had an interview 2 weeks ago, and it's been about 2.5 to 3 weeks, just checking in to express that I still have interest, but wanted to know, is there a status update in relation to this process? So again, clarify that recruitment timeline to basically understand how to move forward in your search process. And then briefly, we want to just take some time to acknowledge some next steps post an interview. So first things first, at the conclusion of your interview experience, take a moment to stop and reflect on the process, primarily within 24 hours. You want to make sure that you ask yourself some good questions to really think about in the process. So first, what went well about the interview experience, and really making sure that you honor and acknowledge what you did like and what you wanted to pull out. But also, were there areas that did not go well? And so thinking through what are the emphasized strengths from that interview area, and then also thinking about what are the areas of improvement that you want to make sure that you hone in on or improve for the next experience. Second, taking the time to really think about what are some of the responses or examples I really like and want to use again specifically in future interview experiences. But then also thinking about what are the questions that maybe you bombed and you need to practice again for future interviews or for future questions. And then finally, giving yourself space and to ask, are you still interested in this position and organization? So when you had an opportunity to engage in real time with people from the organization, and once you've collected information about the position specifically, do you still have the same level of excitement when you start the recruitment process or when you even submitted your employment documents? And so after that reflection process, really take the time to kind of own your process. So extend a thank you note for the interview process. So it gives you another opportunity to really connect with the organization and with the employer or the HR manager who screened you. And really take the time to personalize the thank you note. So again, this is an opportunity to really connect one more time before someone is making a hiring decision. So you want to make sure that it has some content and it has some real likability behind it. If you do find yourself that after the reflection process that you are not interested in a position, take the time to remove yourself from the process. Particularly if you have no intention of accepting the position if offered. And an employer or organization will definitely appreciate and respect you more once you've gone through a reflection process and recognize that, at this point, it's just not a position that you want to seek moving forward, and just communicating that in a clear and effective way. And then monitor your individual timeline of success. So if you're interviewing with multiple organizations, keeping and managing contact information, timeline and processes, and when do you kind of circle back through that is just going to be really important. Very often, or very rarely, we only apply one job at a time. And so just making sure that you take the time to understand your process and connect effectively. So we've reached the end of our kind of conversation around interviewing 101. A quick plug about our office here, the Office of Career and Professional Development. We're located in Bewley Library here on campus on the 3rd floor in the Southern Success Center. And we're definitely here to provide supplemental support. If you have questions about interviewing, you can schedule these appointments through SSE Campus. So we've reached the conclusion of our interviewing 101 presentation. Hopefully you found this information helpful. Thank you so much and have a good one.